Good day. It's a good day for art. Our book today is The Colors and Sounds of Kandinsky's Abstract Art, called The Noisy Paintbox by Barbara Rosenstock, and illustrated by Mary Grandpré. Here's the title page, The Noisy Paintbox. Vasya Kandinsky spent his days learning to be a proper Russian boy. He studied bookfuls of math, science, and history. He practiced piano scales to the marching click of the metronome. He sat stiff and straight at dressed-up dinners while the grown-ups talked and talked and talked. Vasya's well-off world was perfectly polite, until the day his aunt gave him a small wooden paintbox. Every proper Russian boy should appreciate art, said Auntie. She showed Vasya the correct way to mix colors on the paintbox palette. Vasya mixed red with yellow, then he mixed red with blue. As the colors changed, Vasya heard a whisper. Hiss. Louder. Hiss. Then louder still. Hiss. What's that sound? Asked Vasya. I don't hear a thing, said Auntie. Vasya listened as his brush stirred and swished. The swirling colors trilled like an orchestra tuning up for a magical symphony. Mama, Papa, called Vasya. What a noisy paintbox. Silly Vasya. Stop being foolish, said Mama. Vasya painted the sound of the colors. He spun a bright yellow lemon circle into the canvas. It clinked like the highest notes on the keyboard. He brushed a powerful navy rectangle that vibrated deeply like the lowest cello strings. He tossed up jagged swashes of blaring crimson and added cheerful dots of burbling green, clanging orange, and tinkling violet. Vasya painted and painted until the colors went quiet. Look what I made, shouted Vasya. Is it a house? Said Auntie. Is it a flower? Said Mama. What's it supposed to be? Asked Papa. It's music, said Vasya, waltzing his painting around the house. Calm down, said Mama. Do some math, said Papa. Heavens, said Auntie. This boy needs a proper art class. So Vasya went to art class and learned to draw houses and flowers just like everyone else. As the years passed, Vasya finished school and studied to be a lawyer. He ignored his noisy paintbox, and he lived the way people expected. But Vasya couldn't ignore the sounds of the colors singing to him in the streets of Moscow. The canary-colored mailbox whistled as he rode to work, the scarlet haze ringing above the ancient Kremlin walls. An ivory chorus of snowflakes scattered on the sable collar of his overcoat. One evening, suitably steamed and starched, Vasya attended the opera. As the orchestra's music crashed around him, the colors of the noisy paintbox twirled wildly in his mind, stomping lines of vermilion and coral, caroling triangles in pistachio and garnet, thundering arches of aqua and ebony with small points of cobalt and saffron. Vasya heard the colors singing. Vasya saw the music dancing. And Vasya was never quite as proper again. He quit his job teaching law and moved from Moscow to Munich to be a painter. He studied with this famous teacher and then that one. Is it a house? Is it a flower? What's it supposed to be? His teachers asked. Vasya wanted to paint the colors he heard. But maybe the famous teachers knew best. Once again, Vasya put houses and flowers, animals and people into his paintings, just like everyone expected. The teachers were happy. Vasya was not. His artist friends understood. They too were tired of painting pretty landscapes and pretty ladies. They thought art needed to change. Art should make you feel, Vasya told them, like music. Exactly, said his friends, but none of them knew how to paint feelings, until the day Vasya grew brave enough and invited the world to see the paintings roaring from his noisy paint box. Hiss, rattle, bash, zip, murmur, jang, clang. Snapping cerulean points, crunching crimson squares, whispering charcoal lines. Vasya named these paintings after the music he loved. Improvisation, composition, accompaniment, fugue, movement, and simply 3 sounds. With his noisy paint box, Vasya Kandinsky created something entirely new, abstract art. It took a long time for people to understand. Is it a house? Is it a flower? What's it supposed to be? It's my art, Vasya answered. How does it make you feel? The end.
Hi, my name is Barbara, and I'm going to share with you a second part after Karen had read The Noisy Paint Box. We're going to do an art project thinking about Vasily Kandinsky and how inspired he was by his noisy paint box. I don't have a noisy paint box, maybe you do, but I do have a lot of art supplies that I really enjoy to use. So today, thinking about the art that was inspired and inspires so many of us, looking back into the book, we see that Mr. Kandinsky was excited about color and shape, and he felt and moved very freely with his art. He was less worried about painting a picture of something and much more interested in the expressions that he found in his heart and mind by listening to music. Today we're going to do a project similar to that. We're going to do a non-objective art project. Non-objective means that we take ideas from the world that aren't around us as pictures, as symbols or images. We're going to be using geometric shapes. That's true. But we're not going to make pictures of known things in the real world. In other words, sort of non-representative art. So let me give you an example. I have a triangle here. It's a template. And if I'm not going to draw it out, trace it, but if I were to draw a big triangle on this white piece of paper, it would have a name. But it's not a thing that we see in the real world. It's a shape we see in the real world sometimes. If I went like this, though, and put a rectangle on the bottom, you might be inclined to say, oh, it's an arrow, or maybe it's a tree. When we start having names for objects like that are out in the real world, whether it's a house or a bird or a tree or a person or your dog, that's no longer non-objective. It's representative of things in the real world. And so today we're not going to draw pictures of trees. We are going to use what we have around the house to make shapes. Some of you may have some templates, things where you can draw around the edges by tracing. Taking a pencil and tracing, that's an inside shape. Maybe you have some that look like this, and we can trace the outside and the inside. If you have a compass, these are pretty exciting, wonderful things. You can use that too. Or if you're like me, I don't always have all the tools I need for a given project, so I scrounge. I look in the recycling bin. I find all kinds of great shapes of things I can use. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to find objects, whatever you have, and we're going to do a drawing, non-objective, in the style and with the heart of Vasily Kandinsky. Are you ready? Let's go. So, a few things you'll need today: a pencil, the various templates that you want to use, a large piece of white paper, and it doesn't matter which way you have it, whatever's easiest for you. I always put a piece of underpaper where I'm working, so I never have to worry about getting any paint or materials on the tabletop. I have some newspaper under there today. I really recommend that, or anything. If you have a plastic cover to put over your table, that works really well too. So we're going to start today with thinking about not making a picture of something, but just using shapes that we can get from these templates in any sort of freestyle that we want. So I'm going to take this round shape, and sometimes it's easier to stand up when you're doing this. I'm sitting down, but I'm a fairly tall person. But if you stand up, sometimes you can be above it and you make a clearer line. What would we do without our yogurt cartons? I am just going to freely decide that I want to draw or trace, as we say in this case, because it's not free drawing. I am definitely tracing around these caps and lids of things. If you have a template like this, the same idea. It's just that it's on the inside. And I like to fill the paper, but I don't have to. I can choose to make it any way I want to. You may have a ruler or a straight edge. That's a great thing too. You may want to use all of it, or none of it, part of it. This is a project that you're going to do on your own time and in your own way. Sometimes I'll take a shape and play with it a little bit to see where I think it looks best. Where you think it looks best might be really different than me. But this is my project, and you are doing your project. Should I put the middle one in? I'm going to take my time to use the pencil cleanly, and if I need to erase, I can, but I'm trying not to. Trying not to need that. Oh, I think I'll put that there. So this isn't a picture of something, is it? And I like to think about that non-representational art as being able to pass the upside down test. Now, if I were to show you a painting of an object or something that we recognize like that in this book, you can clearly tell if it's right side up or if it happened to be upside down. But in a non-representational piece of artwork, which way up it is entirely up to you. I made it this way up for me, so it would look like that for you, but maybe I actually like it better this way. It doesn't matter because it's never upside down. Okay, let's see what else I want to do. I've got more templates over here to use. I can fill up my paper as much as I want or as little as I want. Again, that's up to you. I can have some shapes touching and some hanging out by themselves. What would you do next if you had the materials that I have here? This one's cut curvy bits. Wonder about that. Do I want to add that, or is that too much? It's a very different shape. Yeah, I'll try it. It's different. It could be kind of fun. Let's see what happens. Sometimes we make decisions and we change our minds because, well, it feels right to us, or it doesn't feel right to us. Let me see. Yeah, that's pretty nice. But it needs some more in another place. It's kind of lonely over here, very complex right here. So I think I'm going to get this size one and do something to help the visual weight. If I had put all of my shapes on one side of the paper, it would have been pretty busy over here. Very crammed in, very plain over there. That's one style of working. In this case, we're going to try to fill up some of the paper space in ways that feels right to you. Okay, I think I'm nearly done here. Maybe just a couple more things. I think we need a little more triangles over here. Now, one way I can tell if I feel I have enough on the paper or it feels right to me is by turning it around. I may have a preference of which way up I like it. Oh, I kind of like that. But I won't know that sometimes with non-objective art until I turn it around. It's not like the landscape here where I know which way is up and which way isn't. So now the option is I'm going to add some color. But now let's see what I could use. I could use colored pencils. They're always easy and fun to work with. Or oil pastels, markers of different kinds, fat ones, fine ones. At this point, there are so many different ways that we can think about making the shapes more alive with color. Deciding where to start is sometimes the hardest, but we just dive in and color these shapes just how you would like them to be. Any way that you choose to do it is your way. You don't even have to color it completely. A certain shape could be partially colored and another color added next to it. I mean, if we're really going to think about how Kandinsky was motivated by the sounds that he heard around him, we can do just about anything we want. It's a kind of a bright color, that one. Let's try blue. Now, Kandinsky was very, very fascinated by the colors of the world. And he believed that every color had an individual, specific voice, and he could hear that. And that voice had particular qualities to it. This was a result of a phenomenon that was not common among people. It's where one sensory pathway in our minds bumps up with another one and influence it so that a person may taste color or see a sound. And so Kandinsky had that. And music and visual art and color was how he experienced his condition, which is called synesthesia. And so Kandinsky was a synesthete. Their personal experiences were different than many people, but I think all of us can be influenced by different experiences we have. I know when I go down to the river or a lake or the ocean, what I hear can sometimes sound like music to me. Maybe you find that to be true also. Now I'm just going to continue coloring these spaces. And earlier today I started another project with the same idea. And I just kept coloring and coloring like this. And that's what, you will do now, as far as you want to. You might want to do the whole background, or just the shapes, or some of the shapes. You also might want to take a marker at some point and accentuate some of these lines by tracing back over with a marker. But maybe you don't want to do that. This is your project. It's a project that you're going to do. I do my project, and you do yours. And the magic is because we each experience the world a little bit differently. So this is the same project, using the same templates that I had, but this time, instead of colored pencils, using oil pastels. They're wonderfully messy, and you can blend some of them with your finger and create intermediate shapes if you wanted to. In this project, and in this particular example, I've covered everything. There's no white paper. The color goes right out to the edges and fills all of the shapes. I added a little black to accentuate some of the lines, but I also didn't in some places as well. And this is another example. Here I have a smaller piece of paper, black, and the crayons shows up really well, the oil pastels, very brilliantly. Did the same thing with the templates, but in this example, I got a little bit wilder. You can see that. I started freehand making lines and dots and colors around the shapes themselves. There are so many different ways to interpret this project, using so many different types of materials. But again, it's non-objective because while we can name these shapes as circles, it isn't a picture of a thing, and it certainly passes the upside down test. Notice in this project I used only circles and then went wild with the oil pastels. And another example, in this case, I used a marker, a couple of different colored markers, and I worked very small. I used line in a different way. Again, circles and triangles and rectangles. But it felt like the condensing of the images could be very interesting. Some people enjoy to work very small. You might want to think about doing one like this. Another way is to think about not using markers or pencils or crayons at all, but choosing paper that's of a color You don't have to use white paper. You could use any colored paper. And paper scraps that you might have that are shapes, or you might wish to cut them into certain shapes and put them down in the ways that you see them. It's kind of like puzzle pieces, isn't it? Again, it's how you arrange these shapes onto the background paper. This is probably not the best example here. It's the same color. But again, it's a project thinking about using shapes together on a background, and there are some other ideas too. So, thank you. Thank you for watching our video, and I hope you enjoyed your project today, and you could keep going with this idea of the noisy paint box. Not just with different materials, but maybe by being inspired by that kind of relationship that you might find yourself. If you were to listen to a piece of music and draw or paint at the same time, how would that music inspire you? What shapes and designs and colors would come out of that? Or maybe going somewhere, sitting by a river and listening to the water flowing, going over the rocks. What sound is that? How would that inspire an artwork? We are so fortunate to have been able to learn from such a wonderful artist as Vasily Kandinsky. Thank you for joining us today.